She had nothing, no home, no food, no one waiting for her. That morning, she was walking the streets asking strangers for work when she saw it. A wallet lying on the ground. When she opened it, her hands began to shake. Bundles of cash, black and gold cards. The name of one of the richest men in the city. For the first time in her life, poverty and opportunity stood face to face. She could disappear with the money and no one would ever find her. But instead, she walked toward the biggest company building in town, ready to return it. She had no idea that this simple act of honesty would drag her into a world of power, enemies, hidden truths, and a connection that would change her destiny forever. Sometimes the poorest girl carries the richest heart. Stay with me. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you believe one good choice can change everything. The morning sun rose slowly over the city, but it did not bring warmth to Tiana. She woke up behind a closed bakery shop on a piece of carton she had carefully folded the night before. The ground was cold. Her stomach hurt from hunger. She had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. Just half a loaf of bread a kind woman gave her. Tiana was only 19, but life had already aged her eyes. She washed her face at a public tap down the street and tied her hair back neatly. Even though her clothes were old and faded, she tried her best to look clean. Today, like every other day, she would search for work, not begging. Work. She walked from one shop to another. "Ma, do you need someone to clean?" "Sir, I can carry goods." "I can wash cars." Most people ignored her. Some waved her away without even looking at her face. A few stared at her torn slippers and shook their heads. By noon, the sun was harsh. The street buzzed with cars, horns, and impatient voices. Tiana stood near the roadside where luxury cars often stopped at the tall glass building across the street. Cross Holdings, one of the biggest companies in the city. That was when she saw it. A long black car pulled over quickly. The door opened and a tall man stepped out, speaking angrily on the phone. "I said, fix it before the meeting," he barked. Even from a distance, Tiana could tell he was important. His suit was sharp. His shoes shone. "Everything about him," said Power. He walked quickly toward the company gate without looking back. The car drove away. Something small dropped near where the car had stopped. At first, nobody noticed, but Tiana did. She stepped closer. It was a wallet. A thick, heavy wallet. Her heart began to beat faster. She looked around. The street was busy, but no one seemed to care. She picked it up slowly. The leather was smooth and expensive. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Money! So much money! Neatly folded bills filled one side. On the other side were shiny black and gold cards. There was also an ID card. Damien Cross, CEO. Her fingers trembled. Damien Cross! Everyone knew that name. One of the richest men in the city. Some said he owned half of it. Tiana swallowed hard. That money could rent her a small room. It could buy food for months. It could change her life overnight. No one saw her pick it up. No one would know. A group of young boys nearby noticed her staring into the wallet. "Hey," one of them whispered. "You're lucky. That's your breakthrough. Run before someone sees you." Another laughed. Tiana closed the wallet slowly. Her stomach growled painfully. She imagined warm food, a soft bed, new clothes, safety. Then she imagined something else. Her mother's voice. "Even if we are poor, we must never be thieves." Tiana's eyes filled with tears. She was poor, but she was not a thief. Without thinking too much, because if she thought too much, she might change her mind. She turned toward the tall glass building across the street. Cross Holdings! Her legs felt weak. as she walked toward the massive gate. Security guards stood outside, dressed in dark uniforms, watching everyone closely. People in suits walked in and out confidently. Tiana tightened her grip on the wallet. As she approached the gate, one of the guards blocked her path. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked coldly, looking at her torn slippers. I need to return something," she said softly. The guard's eyes narrowed. "What do you have there?" She opened the wallet just enough to show the ID. His expression changed instantly. Before she could explain, he grabbed her wrist tightly. "Thief!" he shouted. Within seconds, another guard rushed over. People began to stare. Some shook their heads in disgust. "I'm not a thief! Tiana! Cree! I found it on the road. But no one listened." They dragged her toward the security office. Inside the building upstairs, Domencross stood by the window of his office, unaware that the girl who chose honesty over hunger was about to change his life forever. Downstairs, Tiana's heart pounded wildly as the door to the security room slammed shut. Tiana's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The security guard stood beside her like she was a criminal. Her wrists still hurt from the tight grip. Her eyes were red, but she refused to cry again. Damien Cross stood in front of her, talon cold, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. "So," he repeated calmly, "you thought you could steal from me?" "I didn't steal it," Tiana said quickly. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to look up at him. "I found it on the road after your car left." Doman said nothing. He stretched out his hand. "Heavy to me." She stepped forward slowly and placed the wallet in his palm. The room became quiet. Damien opened it. He checked the cash first. Still there. He flipped through the cards, all intact. His jaw tightened slightly. He pulled out a folded paper from one hidden corner of the wallet. A small white note tucked inside a unfolded Italiano. His expression changed for a second. Then it disappeared. The guards looked confused. "Sir," one of them asked. Doman closed the wallet calmly. "How much did you take?" he asked Tiana. "Nothing," she answered immediately. He stepped closer. "There was a small white note inside," he said quietly. "What was written on it?" Tiana blinked. She swallowed. It said, "Don't trust anyone at the meeting." The room went completely silent. The guards looked at each other. That note was private. No one else knew about it. Damien stared at her for a long moment. She had told the truth. If she wanted to steal, she would have taken the money and disappeared. If she wanted to lie, she would not have known about the note. He turned to the guards. "Leave us!" They hesitated for a second, then stepped outside. Now it was just the billionaire and the homeless girl. Tiana felt small in that large room. The air smelled expensive. Everything looked polished and powerful. Damien studied her carefully. "Why didn't you keep it?" he asked. She looked down at her torn slippers. "Because it's not mine." "You're homeless," he said bluntly. She nodded. "You're hungry." She nodded again. "And you still returned it." Her voice became soft but firm. "My mother used to say, if we lose our honesty, we lose everything." For the first time, Damien's expression softened slightly. He reached into the wallet, pulled out a thick stack of cash, and held it toward her. "Take it!" Tiana stared at the money. Her stomach twisted again. That money could change everything. But slowly, she shook her head. "I don't want it." His eyebrows lifted. "You don't want money." "I want work," she said quietly. "Any job. I can clean. I can run errands. I can wash floors. I just need a chance." Damien looked at her differently now. Most people begged for money. She was asking for dignity. He walked toward the window and stood there for a moment. thinking. Outside, the city moved fast and loud. Inside, silence filled the room. Finally, he turned back. "Come tomorrow, at 8 o'clock a.m., he said. "You'll start in the maintenance department."
Tiana's eyes widened.
"Really?" "Yes. But listen carefully," he added. "This is not charity. You will work hard. One mistake and you're out." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were different. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. He pressed a button on his desk. The door opened and his assistant stepped in, a sharp-looking woman with cold eyes. "Register her details," Damien said shortly. "Temporary stuff." The assistant looked shocked. "Sir? Her? Is there a problem?" Damien asked calmly. "No, sir," she said quickly, though her eyes burned with dislike as she glanced at Tiana.
Tiana felt it. The hatred. The judgment.
As she followed the assistant out of the office, she heard whispers already starting in the hallway. "Who is she? She looks like she came from the street. Why would Mr. Cross hire someone like that?" Tiana kept her head down. She didn't care about their words. She had a job. For the first time in months, she had hope. But upstairs inside his office, Damien opened the wallet again and stared at the folded white note. "Don't trust anyone at the meeting." His jaw tightened. Someone inside his company was planning something, and somehow the homeless girl who returned his wallet had just walked into the middle of it. Downstairs, as Tiana stepped outside the building, the assistant pulled out her phone. "She's coming tomorrow," she whispered angrily to someone on the other line. "Yes, the street girl. We need to handle this before she gets too comfortable." Tiana had no idea. She walked away, smiling softly, unaware that her new job was not just an opportunity. It was the beginning of a storm. Tiana did not sleep much that night. She was too excited. She kept repeating the words in her mind. "Come tomorrow at 8 a.m." For the first time in months, she had somewhere to be. Before sunrise, she washed carefully at the public tap. She borrowed a simple blouse from an old street vendor who liked her and cleaned her faded skirt as best as she could. Her slippers were still worn out, but they were clean. When she reached Cross Holdings, the building looked even bigger than before.
People in suits walked past her confidently.
Some stared at her, some whispered, but this time she didn't turn back. She walked inside. The cold-eat assistant from yesterday stood at the reception desk. "You're late," the woman said sharply. Tiana looked at the clock above the wall.
Las 7:55 Alto M.
"I'm sorry, Ma," she said softly. The woman's lips tightened. "Fala!" She led Tiana through long, shining hallways to the maintenance department at the back of the building. The smell changed there. Less perfume, more cleaning chemicals. "This is where you belong," the assistant said coldly. "You'll clean offices, carry files, and run errands. Don't speak unless you're spoken to."
Tiana nodded.
She didn't mind hard work. She just needed a chance. A middle-aged supervisor handed her a mop and a list of rooms. "Start from the 3rd floor," he said without looking at her. "And don't mess anything up." Her first task was cleaning a large conference room. The table was long and polished. The chairs were heavy and expensive. She worked carefully, making sure she touched nothing important.
But as she finished and stepped out, 2 female staff members blocked her path.
"You're the street girl, right?" one of them said with a smirk. Tiana said nothing. "Don't think you're special because the boss gave you a job," the other added. "You're still just a cleaner." "I'm here to work," Tiana replied quietly. They laughed and walked away. By afternoon, she had cleaned 6 offices. Her back hurt.
Her hands were dry from chemicals, but she didn't complain.
Then something strange happened. She entered one private office on the 4th floor. The door was slightly open. No one was inside. On the desk lay a file. Open! She wasn't trying to look, but one bold headline caught her eye. Emergency board meeting. Financial risk and internal leak. Her heart skipped. She remembered the white note inside the wallet. Don't trust anyone at the meeting. She stepped closer, just to understand what it meant. The document mentioned large amounts of money missing. It mentioned suspicion of someone inside the company. Suddenly, what are you doing? Tiana froze. A tall man in a gray suit stood at the door. His face was sharp and unfriendly. I was cleaning, she said quickly. Cleaning or spying? He asked coldly. I didn't touch anything. He walked over and looked at the open file. His eyes darkened. You weren't supposed to see this! I didn't mean to. Security! He shouted suddenly. Within seconds, 2 guards appeared. Tiana's chest tightened. Not again! She was going through private documents. The man said firmly. Probably sent by someone. That's not true! Tiana cried. The file was already open, but no one listened. They dragged her downstairs to the supervisor's office. Her heart broke. Was this a mistake? Was she never meant to escape the street? Moments later, Doman Cross walked into the room. He looked from the guards to Tiana. What happened? He asked calmly. She was spying on confidential files. The man in gray said, This is Syria. Doman turned to Tiana. Did you open the file? No, sir, she said honestly. It was already open. I was cleaning. I only saw the headline. And what did it say? Doman asked quietly. Tiana hesitated. Then she answered carefully. Something about financial risk and an internal leak. The man in gray stiffened. Damien noticed. He looked at the guards. Leave. They stepped out. Now it was just the 3 of them. Doman studied Tiana's face. There was fear there, but not guilt. He turned slowly to the man in gray. Why was that confidential file left open in an unlocked office? He asked. The man said nothing. Silence filled the room. Finally, Doman spoke. Tiana, go back to work. Her eyes widened. Sir, you heard me. She nodded quickly and rushed out before anyone could change their mind. But as she walked back toward the hallway, she felt something cold run down her spine. The man in gray was staring at her, not with anger, but with warning, and as she picked up her mop again, she heard him whisper under his breath, This girl is going to be a problem. Tiana didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped into something far bigger than cleaning floors, and someone inside the building was already planning her downfall. Tiana tried to focus on her work, but her hands would not stop shaking. The man in the gray suit had not taken his eyes off her the rest of the afternoon. Even when she was cleaning far down the hallway, she could feel his stare burning into her back. She finished her tasks quietly and avoided looking at anyone. But before she could leave for the day, the cold assistant appeared again. Mr. Kraus wants to see you, she said flatly. Tiana's heart dropped. Had she done something wrong again? She followed the assistant upstairs. This time the hallway felt longer. The air felt heavier. When she entered Damien's office, he was standing by the window, looking down at the city. Close the door, he said calmly. She did. For a moment, there was silence. Then he turned to face her. You saw something today, he said. Yes, sir. Tell me exactly what you saw. Tiana swallowed. I saw a file on the desk. It was open. I only read the title. It said something about financial risk and an internal leak. Damien's expression didn't change. Did you touch it? No, sir. Did anyone tell you to look at it? No. He studied her carefully, as if trying to read her thoughts. Tiana, he said quietly, This company's not as peaceful as it looks. There are people here who smile in front of me and betray me behind my back." She listened closely. "You walked into something sensitive," he continued. "And because you are new and easy to blame, you are now a target." Her chest tightened. "A target?" "Yes. If money continues to go missing, they will accuse you. You are poor. You are new. You have no one to defend you." The truth hurt, but she knew he was right. "What should I do?" she asked softly. "Stay invisible," he replied. "Do your job. Speak to no one about what you saw. Trust no one." She nodded. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, he added, "Auntie..." She stopped. "Be careful." Those 2 words followed her all the way downstairs. That evening, she finished work later than usual. The sky had already turned dark. The building lights glowed behind her as she walked back toward the street where she usually slept. She was tired, but her mind was restless. Someone inside that building was stealing money, and someone was already trying to make her look guilty. When she reached the small corner behind the bakery where she kept her few belongings, she froze. Her carton was gone. The small bag that held her spare blouse was gone. The thin blanket she used at night was gone. In their place were ashes, burned pieces of fabric. Her knees became weak. She dropped to the ground slowly. "No," she whispered. Someone had found her sleeping spot. Someone had destroyed the only thing she owned. Tears streamed down her face. This was not random. It was a warning. "Leave," the message said without words. Her body trembled as she hugged herself. She had nowhere else to go. As she sat there in shock, she heard footsteps behind her. She quickly wiped her tears and turned around. It was the old fruit vendor who had lent her the blouse that morning. "My child," the woman gasped. "What happened here?" Tiana couldn't speak. The woman looked at the ashes and shook her head slowly. "Some people cannot stand a good heart," she murmured. Tiana felt something break inside her. "I only wanted to work," she whispered. "Why does trouble keep following me?" The woman gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because light attracts darkness," she said quietly. At that exact moment, across the street, a black car stopped briefly. Inside the car, someone watched her through tinted glass. The man in the gray suit. He smirked slightly. "She quit soon," he muttered to himself. But he didn't know Tiana. She wiped her tears slowly and stood up. She had lost everything before. She had survived worse. If they wanted her gone, they would have to try harder. What she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. Because the enemy inside the building was not just trying to scare her. They were preparing something bigger. And very soon, she would be forced to choose between running away or fighting back. That night, Tiana did not sleep. She sat beside the ashes of her burnt belongings, hugging her knees. The cold wind touched her skin, but she barely felt it. Her mind was louder than the night. Someone had followed her. Someone had found the only small place she called home. This was not a mistake. It was a warning. "Leave the company," the ashes seemed to whisper. For a moment, she thought about quitting. Life on the street was already hard. Why invite more danger? But then she remembered the way the staff had looked at her, the way they expected her to fail. If she ran now, they would win. Before sunrise, the old fruit vendor, Mama Bisi, returned with a small nylon bag. "Take this," she said gently. Inside was a thin wrapper, a loaf of bread, and a small bottle of water. Tiana's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Mama Bai smiled. "Because someone once helped me." When I had nothing, Tiana held the bread tightly. I don't understand why this keeps happening, she whispered. Mama Bay looked at her carefully. Maybe it's time you stop carrying everything alone. What happened to you before the streets?
Tiana hesitated.
She had never told anyone, but the words slowly began to come out. My parents died when I was 16, she said quietly. A car accident. I went to live with my uncle. She paused. He said he would take care of me. But when money became tight, he said I was a burden. One day, he accused me of stealing from him.
Mama Bessie's eyes widened.
I didn't steal anything, Tiana continued. But he beat me and threw me out. No one believed me.
Her voice cracked. That was the first time someone called me a thief.
Now, at Cross Holdings, history was repeating itself. Mama Bay touched her shoulder gently. Listen to me, child. When people cannot control you, they try to destroy you. But you must not let them rewrite your story. Tiana nodded slowly. She wiped her tears. I won't run. That morning she went to work as usual, but something was different. When she arrived, whispers followed her again, this time louder. She slept outside. Maybe she burned her own things. She's looking for pity. She ignored them. By afternoon, Mr. Kelvian, her supervisor, suddenly called her into his office. Money is missing from the supply account. A site called the Lee. And guess who signed the last delivery sheet? Tiana's heart dropped. I don't handle money, she said quickly. But your name is here, he said, showing her a paper. She stared at it. It was her signature. But she had never signed anything like that. This isn't right, she whispered. Someone! Security! Mr. Kelvin shouted. Her chest tightened again. Not again. Moments later, Doman entered the room. He looked serious. What's going on? He asked. Funds missing, Mr. Kelvin replied. And her name is on the documents. Damien turned to Tiana. Did you sign this? She looked at him with desperate honesty. No. Sir, I can write my name, but that is not my handwriting. Someone is setting me up. Silence filled the room. Damien studied the paper closely. Then he looked at her hands. Write your name, he sighed calmly. She took a pen and slowly wrote, Tia. The handwriting was clearly different. Mr. Kelvin shifted uncomfortably. Doman's jaw tightened. Get out, he told Kelvin. When the door closed, Damien looked at Tiana again. You were right, he said quietly. You are being targeted, she swallowed. Why? She asked softly. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He read the message. His expression darkened. Then he showed her the screen. It was an unknown number. Tell this street girl to leave the company. Next time we won't burn clothes. We'll burn something else. Tiana's blood ran cold. That evening, as she left work, two masked boys stepped out from a dark corner near the street. One grabbed her arm roughly. Leave that company, he whispered harshly, or you'll regret it. They pushed her to the ground and ran away. Her elbows scraped against the rough road. Pain shot through her arm, but she did not cry. She slowly stood up. Across the street, a car door slammed open. Damien had seen everything. He rushed toward her. Are you hurt? He asked sharply. She shook her head, though her arm was bleeding. He looked furious. This has gone too far, he muttered. Tiana looked up at him. For the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. Not suspicion, not distance, protection. But neither of them knew that the people behind these threats were not just angry employees. They were desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. The storm inside Cross Holdings was no longer quiet, and Tiana was standing right in the middle of it. Damien's car was quiet as it drove through the city that evening. Tiana sat in the back seat holding a clean cloth against her bleeding elbow. She had never sat inside such an expensive car before. The seats were soft. The air smelled fresh, but her heart was heavy. "I'm fine, sir," she said softly. "You are not fine," Damien replied firmly from the front seat. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the steering wheel harder than necessary. No one had ever defended her like this before. They arrived at a small private clinic. Damien spoke briefly to the nurse, and within minutes, Tiana's wound was cleaned and properly dressed. She kept looking at him with confusion. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yes, I do," he answered. She looked down. "Why?" He was silent for a moment. "Because this is happening because of me," he finally said. "You walked into my company with honesty. Now you are being punished for it." That night, instead of dropping her back on the street, Doman drove to a small apartment building on the quiet side of town. It wasn't luxury, but it was safe. He handed her a key. "You will stay here for now," he said. "It's temporary." Tiana stared at the key in her hand. "I can't afford this," she whispered. "You don't need to," he replied calmly. "It's part of your employment benefits." Tears filled her eyes again. No one had ever given her something without asking for something in return. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once and left. Inside the apartment, Tiana walked slowly from room to room. There was a small bed, a tiny kitchen, a clean bathroom. She sat on the edge of the bed and touched the pillow gently. For the first time in months, she would sleep indoors. But across town in a dark office, the man in the gray suit was not pleased. "She's getting too close," he muttered angrily. "And now he's protecting her." The next morning, Cross Holdings buzzed with tension. Damien had increased security. Cameras were being checked. Staff were questioned. The atmosphere felt heavy. Tiana worked quietly, but people looked at her differently now. Some with fear, some with jealousy. By afternoon, Damien called her upstairs again. "I need you to help me with something," he said. She nodded. He led her into a private section of the building she had never seen before. It felt less like an office and more like a home. In one of the rooms sat an elderly woman in a wheelchair, staring out the window. "This is my mother," Damien said softly. The woman turned slowly. Her eyes were warm, but tired. "So this is the honest girl?" she said gently. Tiana felt shy. "Yes." The elderly woman smiled. "Come closer." Tiana stepped forward. "Damien doesn't trust easily," the woman said. "If he is protecting you, then you must be special." Tiana glanced at Damien. His face was calm, but she saw something softer there. For the first time, she realized something important. Damien was not just a powerful billionaire. He was a son, a man carrying pressure, a man surrounded by enemies. Later that evening, while Tiana was arranging some files in the private office area, two staff members walked past whispering. "She thinks she's important now. Let's see how important she feels tomorrow." Tiana ignored them, but she did not see the small envelope one of them slipped into her cleaning cart. The next morning, everything exploded. Security officers walked into the maintenance room. "Tiana," one said firmly, "come with us." Her heart dropped. "What happened?" she asked. "We found money missing from the executive office," the officer said. "And this was found in your cart." He held up the envelope. Inside was a thick bundle of cash.
Tiana's breath left her body.
"That's not mine," she whispered. They escorted her upstairs. The hallway was full of watching eyes. Whispers filled the air again. She finally showed her true colors. I knew it. In the main office, Damien stood waiting. He looked at the money. Then he looked at Tiana. His face was unreadable. "Tiana," he said calmly, "did you steal this?" Tears gathered in her eyes. "No, sir. I swear someone put it there." Silence filled the room. Everyone waited. Would the billionaire believe the homeless girl again? Or would this be the end? Damien took a slow breath.
Then he said something no one expected.
"Check the cameras." The room went quiet because if the cameras were checked, someone inside the building would be exposed. And this time, there would be no hiding. The room was silent after Damien said those two words. "Check the cameras." The staff exchanged nervous glances. The security officer hesitated for a moment, then nodded and stepped out. Tiana stood in the center of the office, her hands shaking. The envelope of money lay on the desk like a curse. She felt the same pain she had felt years ago when her uncle accused her of stealing. No proof, no support, just shame. One of the staff members crossed her arms. "Sir, we all saw the money in her cart," she said sharply. "What more proof do we need?" Damien did not look at her. "We need the truth," he replied calmly. Minutes later, the head of security returned with a laptop. The office lights dimmed slightly as the footage appeared on the screen. The video showed the maintenance hallway from earlier that morning. There was Tiana pushing her cleaning cart. She entered one office. Coming out then, a man walked past casually.
The man in the gray suit. He stopped beside her cart. He looked around.
No one was watching. He slipped something inside. The video froze. The room went completely silent. The man in gray stiffened. "That footage is edited," he said quickly. "This is ridiculous!" Damien's eyes turned cold to play it again. The security officer replayed it from another camera angle. Clearer this time. The envelope. His hand. No doubt. The staff began whispering. "You set her up!" "Why would he do that?" The man in gray's face darkened. "She has been snooping around confidential files," he snapped. "She's a risk. I was protecting the company." "No," Damien said quietly. "You were protecting yourself." He walked closer. "Funds have been disappearing for months. You were in charge of internal auditing. You tried to use her as a shield." The man's mask finally fell. "You don't understand," he shouted angrily. "I built this company with you. I deserve more. You deserve prison." Dolman replied coldly. Security stepped forward. As they grabbed him, the man glared at Tiana. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You think you've won? You don't even know who you are." Those words sent a chill down her spine. He was dragged away. The office slowly emptied, leaving only Damien and Tiana. She finally broke down. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm tired," she whispered. "Why does this keep happening to me?" Damien looked at her differently now. Not as an employee, not as a responsibility, but as someone who had been fighting alone for too long. "You didn't break," he said. That's why she wiped her face slowly.
Later that evening, as she returned to the small apartment he had given her, her phone buzzed, an unknown number.
Her hands trembled as she opened the message. "If you want to know the truth about your parents' accident, meet me tomorrow." Her breath stopped. How did they know about her parents? Her heart began racing. The message continued. "Your parents didn't just die. They were silenced." Tiana felt the room spin. All these years, she had believed it was just an accident. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen. Was this another trap? Or was this the truth she had never been given? The next morning at work, she could barely focus. Damien noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she showed him the message. His expression darkened immediately. "This is dangerous," he said. But what if it's true? She whispered. What if someone knows something? Damien clenched his jaw. They want to lure you out. After yesterday, someone is desperate. Tiana looked at him. If I don't go, I'll never know. Silence filled the office. Finally, Damien spoke. You will not go alone. Her eyes widened. You'll come with me? No, he said firmly. But you won't be unprotected. She took a deep breath. Tomorrow could change everything. As she left his office, she didn't see the shadow watching from the end of the hallway. The real enemy had not been caught yet. The man in gray was only a piece of the puzzle. And now, Tiana was about to step into something far bigger than stolen money. Tomorrow night, she would face the truth, and the truth might destroy everything she thought she knew. Tiana did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her small bed, staring at the message again and again. Your parents didn't just die. They were silenced. The words felt heavy. 4 years, she had accepted the story. A car accident. Rainy night. Bad luck. But what if it wasn't that simple? The next evening, Damien stood in his office giving quiet instructions to 2 trusted security officers. She won't be alone, A sighed firmly. Stay hidden. Do not step in unless I say. Tiana stood nearby, her hands slightly trembling. Are you sure you want to do this? Damien asked her one last time. She nodded slowly. I've lived with questions for too long. The meeting location was an old warehouse near the edge of the city. The area was quiet. Too quiet. Tiana stepped out of the car alone. Her heart pounded with every step. Inside the warehouse, a single light bulb hung from the ceiling. A figure stood in the shadows. Who are you? Tiana asked, her voice barely steady. The man stepped forward. It was not the man in the gray suit. It was someone older. Someone she recognized. Her breath caught. It was her uncle. You, she whispered. He looked thinner, older, and nervous. You shouldn't have come, he muttered. You said my parents were silenced, she said, her voice shaking. What does that mean?
He ran a hand over his face.
Your father discovered financial fraud years ago, he said quietly. He worked as an accountant for a major firm connected to powerful investors. He was going to expose them. Tiana's chest tightened. The night of the accident, he continued. He was meeting someone to hand over evidence. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't just a crash, her uncle said. Their brakes were tampered with. The world felt like it was spinning. Why didn't you tell me? Secret. Because I was afraid, he shouted suddenly. They warned me. They said if I spoke, you would disappear, too. She stepped back, shaking. Who are they? Before he could answer, another voice echoed from behind. You should have stayed quiet. Tiana froze. A tall man stepped into the light. One of the company's board members. A man Damien trusted. Everything clicked at once. The missing money, the internal leak, the threats. Her father had tried to expose corruption, and now history was repeating itself. You used the company to hide your crimes, Tiana said, her voice breaking but strong. You killed my parents, the man smirked. Careful with your words. Before anything else could happen, headlights flashed outside. Them walked in, calm but furious. Your game is over, A sighed coldly. Police officers followed behind him. The board member tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. He was arrested on the spot.
As he was taken away, he glared at Tiana.
You should have taken the money and stayed poor, he hissed. Tiana stood still. No, she said softly. I chose honesty. Later that night, everything felt quiet again. The truth had come out. Her parents' names were cleared. The company board was cleaned of corruption, and the stolen funds were traced back to the same criminal network. Days later, Damien stood in front of the company's staff. Integrity built this company. A-side firmly, and integrity will protect it. He turned toward Tiana. She reminded us of that. Some clapped, some looked ashamed, but no one dared to whisper anymore. That evening, Damien handed Tiana a small envelope. Inside was not money. It was a scholarship offer and an official position in the company's training program. You deserve more than survival, he said quietly. You deserve a future. Tiana looked out from the company balcony at the same street where she once searched for work, the same road where she found a wallet, the same place where hunger once fought with her conscience. If she had chosen money that day, none of this would have happened. She would still be hiding, still running. But she chose honesty, and honesty changed everything. Tears rolled down her face, not from pain this time, but from freedom. She was no longer the homeless girl behind the bakery. She was no longer the accused thief. She was the daughter of brave parents. She was strong. She was seen. And as the city lights glowed around her, she whispered softly, "Thank you, Mama. I didn't lose my honesty." Behind her, Damien watched quietly, not as a billionaire, but as someone who had just witnessed how one small, honest choice could shake the powerful and rebuild a broken